Hi, Sophie. I'm so glad we're finally recording our travel podcast. I think people will love hearing about our wildest adventures.
Me too, Ava. And sometimes travel is not just about beautiful places. Sometimes it's about getting into trouble and finding your way out.
Oh, I know you have some crazy stories. Didn't you once get lost in a forest?
Yes, and it was nothing like I expected. I thought it would be a simple walk, but it turned into a real adventure. Do you want to hear the whole story?
Of course. Start from the beginning. Where were you?
It was in a huge national park. I joined a group hike, and everything was perfect at first. The sun was shining, the birds were singing, and I felt so free. I was taking photos of a waterfall, and when I looked up, my group was gone.
Wait, you lost the whole group? How did that happen?
I guess I was too slow, or maybe they didn't notice I stopped. I tried to follow the path, but every tree looked the same. After a while, I realized I was completely lost.
That must have been scary. What did you do first?
At first, I tried to stay calm. I thought, okay, I'll just walk back the way I came. But after 20 minutes, I was even more lost. My phone had no signal. I started to feel nervous.
Did you have any food or water?
I had a small bottle of water and a chocolate bar, not much. I started to think about all the survival shows I'd watched. I remember they always say, don't panic.
Good advice, but what about wild animals? Did you see anything?
That's the craziest part. As it got dark, I heard something moving in the bushes. I froze. Then I saw two eyes shining in the dark. It was a wild cat, maybe a lynx or even a tiger. I didn't wait to find out. I climbed the nearest tree as fast as I could.
You climbed a tree? That's impressive. How long did you stay up there?
All night. I was so tired, but I was too scared to sleep. I listened to the sounds of the forest, owls, insects, and sometimes something big moving below. I kept thinking, is this really happening to me?
Did you try to call for help?
I shouted a few times, but no one answered. I tried to use my phone's flashlight, but the battery was low. I decided to save it for emergencies.
What did you think about while you were up there?
Honestly, I thought about my family, my friends, and all the things I took for granted, like my warm bed and a hot shower. I promised myself that if I got out, I'd never complain about small problems again.
That's deep. Did you have any way to know the time?
Only by the sky. I watched the stars and waited for the sun to rise. It was the longest night of my life.
What happened in the morning?
When the sun came up, I looked around and saw the wild cat was gone. I climbed down and tried to find a way out. I followed the sound of a river, hoping it would lead me somewhere.
That's smart. Rivers usually lead to people or roads.
Exactly. I walked for hours, sometimes through thick bushes and mud. I slipped and fell a few times, but I kept going. I even found some wild berries to eat. They tasted sour, but I was so hungry I didn't care.
Did you ever feel like giving up?
A few times, yes, but I kept telling myself just one more step. I tried to remember funny stories from home to keep my spirits up. I even started talking to myself out loud.
That's a good way to stay positive. Did you learn anything about yourself?
I learned that I'm stronger than I thought, and I learned that sometimes you have to trust yourself, even when you're scared.
That's a great lesson. And telling stories like this is a perfect way to practice English. You use the past tense, describe feelings, and learn new words.
Yes, and when you share real experiences, people want to listen. It's not just about grammar, it's about connecting with others.
So listeners, if you're learning English, try telling your own adventure stories. Even small moments can be exciting if you add details and feelings. And don't forget, every adventure, even a scary one, can teach you something new. I'm so glad you're safe, Sophie. Next time, maybe you'll tell us about the time you cooked dinner in the wild. That's another crazy story. But yes, let's do it. I promise it has a happy ending and a delicious one. So, Sophie, after your wild night in the tree, how did you finally get out of the forest?
When the sun came up, I felt a little braver. I climbed down and started walking toward the sound of water. I thought, if I find a river, maybe I'll find people or a road.
That's smart. Did you find the river?
Yes, after about an hour of walking, I reached a small river. The water was cold and clear. I drank a little and followed it downstream. I hoped it would lead me somewhere safe.
Did you see any signs of people?
Not at first. I saw animal tracks and some broken branches, but no people. I kept walking, sometimes through thick bushes and mud. My shoes were soaked and I was tired, but I didn't want to stop.
Did you ever feel like giving up?
A few times, yes. I was hungry and my legs hurt, but I kept thinking just one more step. I tried to remember funny stories from home to keep my spirits up. I even started talking to myself out loud.
That's a good way to stay positive. Did you learn anything about yourself?
I learned that I'm stronger than I thought, and I learned that sometimes you have to trust yourself, even when you're scared.
Did anything strange happen while you were following the river?
Actually, yes. I saw something shiny in the mud. At first, I thought it was just a rock, but when I got closer, I realized it was a small metal box. It looked old and was half buried.
A metal box? Like a treasure chest?
Kind of. I pulled it out and tried to open it. The lock was rusty, but after a few tries, it popped open. Inside, there were some old coins, a tiny notebook, and a photo of a family. It was like finding a piece of history in the middle of nowhere.
That's amazing. Did you keep the box?
No, I decided to leave it where I found it. Maybe it belonged to someone who lived there long ago. I took a photo with my phone, though, so I could remember the moment.
That's a real adventure. So, did you finally find help?
Yes, after a few more hours, I heard voices. I followed the sound and found a group of hikers. They were surprised to see me, and they helped me get back to the main trail. I was so happy and grateful.
What a story! You survived a night in a tree, met a wild animal, found a hidden box, and made it out safe. That's the kind of adventure people dream about.
It was scary, but now I laugh about it. And I think it made me braver and more curious about the world.
And it gave you a great story to tell on our podcast. I think our listeners will love it, and maybe it will inspire them to try new things, even if they're a little scary.
I hope so. And remember, every adventure, even a tough one, can teach you something new.
Next time, let's talk about your wild cooking experience in the forest. I heard you made soup with wild berries and mushrooms.
Oh, yes, that's another crazy story. But for now, I'm just happy to be safe and to share my adventure with you and everyone listening.
You know, Sophie, after hearing your story about getting lost in the forest, I keep thinking how travel can be full of surprises. Sometimes the best moments are the ones we never expect.
Absolutely. And speaking of surprises, do you remember that time we tried to cook dinner in the wild? I thought it would be easy, but it turned into a real adventure.
Oh, yes. We wanted to make something special, so we decided to cook over a campfire. I remember searching for dry wood and trying to start the fire. It took us almost an hour.
And when we finally got the fire going, the wind changed direction and blew smoke right into our faces. We were coughing and laughing at the same time.
I was so hungry, but all we had were some potatoes, a few mushrooms, and wild berries. I wasn't sure if the mushrooms were safe, so we spent ages looking them up on my phone.
Good thing we had internet. I remember you saying, if we eat the wrong mushrooms, this podcast will be our last.
That's true. We were so careful. Finally, we wrapped the potatoes in foil and put them in the fire. The smell was amazing.
But then a squirrel came and tried to steal our berries. I chased it away, but it was so fast. I think it wanted to join our dinner.
The best part was when we tasted the food. The potatoes were soft and smoky, and the berries were sweet. It wasn't a fancy meal, but it felt like a feast after a long day.
I agree. Cooking outside made everything taste better, and we learned that sometimes simple food is the most delicious.
Plus, we laughed so much. I think that's what makes travel special. The funny moments, the little problems, and the memories we create together.
Exactly. And for anyone listening, don't be afraid to try new things when you travel. Even if it doesn't go perfectly, you'll have a great story to tell.
Next, let's talk about that crazy walk we took after dinner. Remember how we found something strange in the swamp?
Oh, yes, that was unbelievable. But let's save that story for the next part.
Stay tuned, everyone. Our adventure is just getting started. After our wild dinner in the forest, I thought the adventure was over. But as the sun started to set, you suggested we take a walk to explore the area. I remember feeling tired, but also curious. Who knows what we might find?
I was still full of energy. The forest looked magical in the evening light. We followed a narrow path that led us to a swamp. The air was thick and quiet, and the ground was soft under our feet. I joked, maybe we'll find a hidden treasure here.
And then you actually spotted something strange sticking out of the mud. At first, I thought it was just a piece of wood, but you said, "Wait, look at that." We got closer and saw it was an old wooden box, half buried and covered in moss. I couldn't believe it.
We tried to pull it out, but it was stuck. I found a long stick and used it to dig around the box. After a few minutes, we managed to lift it out. It was heavy and looked like it hadn't been touched for years.
My hands were shaking with excitement. We tried to open the box, but the lock was rusty. You found a flat stone and used it to break the lock. When the lid finally opened, we both gasped.
Inside, there were old coins, a faded map, and a small notebook. The coins were covered in dirt, but you could still see some strange symbols. The map showed the forest and a red X near the swamp. The notebook was written in another language, maybe French or Italian.
We sat down on a dry patch of grass and tried to read the notebook. Some words looked familiar, but most were a mystery. I said, "This feels like a real-life adventure movie."
I agreed. We took photos of everything and tried to guess what the red X meant. Maybe someone hid the box a long time ago and wanted to come back for it. Or maybe it was just a game.
Suddenly, we heard a splash in the water. I jumped up thinking it might be an animal, but it was just a frog jumping from one lily pad to another. We laughed and realized how lucky we were to find something so unusual.
I wanted to keep exploring, but it was getting dark. We decided to leave the box where we found it, but we took the map and notebook with us. Maybe we could show them to someone who could translate the writing.
On the way back to our camp, we talked about all the strange things that can happen when you travel. Sometimes the best stories come from moments you never planned.
That's true. And for anyone listening, don't be afraid to explore new places. You never know what you'll discover. A hidden box, a new friend, or just a funny story to share.
Next time, let's talk about the time we got caught in a rainstorm and had to build a shelter out of branches and leaves. That was another adventure.
I remember that. But for now, I'm still thinking about our mysterious box in the swamp. Maybe one day we'll go back and solve the mystery.
I hope so. Thanks for listening, everyone. Our journey is just beginning. After our adventure with the mysterious box in the swamp, I thought maybe the surprises were over for the day. But nature had other plans. The sky started to turn dark, and suddenly big drops of rain began to fall.
I remember that moment so well. At first, it was just a light rain, but in a few minutes, it became a real storm. The wind was strong, and the trees were shaking. We had to find shelter fast.
We looked around and saw a big fallen tree with lots of branches. I said, "Let's use these branches to build a shelter." We worked together, stacking branches and leaves to make a small roof. It wasn't perfect, but it kept most of the rain out.
I was soaked, but I started laughing. You said, well, at least we're not bored. We sat under our shelter, listening to the rain and telling stories to pass the time. It felt like we were real explorers.
The rain lasted for hours. We watched the drops fall and tried to guess when it would stop. I remember you started singing a funny song about the weather, and I joined in. It made everything feel better.
When the rain finally stopped, the forest looked fresh and clean. The air smelled amazing, and the leaves were shining with water. We stepped out and saw a rainbow in the sky. It was so beautiful.
That rainbow felt like a reward after all our hard work. We took photos and promised to remember that moment forever. I realized that sometimes the best memories come from difficult situations.
Yes, and building a shelter together taught us a lot. We learned to be creative, to work as a team, and to stay positive even when things go wrong.
For anyone listening, don't be afraid of a little rain or trouble when you travel. Sometimes those moments become your favorite stories.
And if you ever get caught in a storm, just remember, find shelter, stay calm, and make the best of it. You might even see a rainbow at the end.
Next, let's talk about the time we met a group of hikers who shared their own wild stories with us. That was another unforgettable part of our journey.
Oh, I can't wait to tell that one. Their stories were even crazier than ours.
Meeting that group of hikers after the storm was one of the best surprises of our trip. I remember we were still a bit wet and tired, but when we saw their campfire in the distance, it felt like finding an oasis in the desert.
Yes, I was so happy to see other people. We walked over and they immediately invited us to sit by the fire and warm up. There were 4 of them, 2 friends from Germany, a couple from Spain, and a local guide. Everyone was sharing food and stories. It felt like we'd joined a little family in the middle of the forest.
I loved how everyone was so open. The German guys offered us hot tea and some chocolate. The Spanish couple had a guitar and started playing soft music. The guide told us about the history of the forest and the animals that lived there. It was so interesting to hear stories from different backgrounds.
I remember the guide's story about the old legend of the forest. He said that many years ago, people believed there was a hidden treasure somewhere near the swamp. That made us laugh because we had just found that mysterious box earlier.
Yes, when we told them about the box, everyone got excited. The guide wanted to see the map and the notebook we found. He said the writing looked like an old local dialect, maybe from a family who lived there 100 years ago. The Spanish couple tried to help translate, and we all sat together trying to solve the mystery.
It was like being in a detective club. Everyone had ideas about what the red X on the map could mean. Some thought it was just a game. Others believed it was a real clue. The German guys even wanted to go back to the swamp the next day to look for more signs.
We spent hours talking, laughing, and sharing food. I learned so much about other cultures just by listening to their stories. The Spanish couple told us about a festival in their hometown where people throw tomatoes at each other. The Germans shared a funny story about getting lost in the Alps and being rescued by a farmer with a cow.
I loved how everyone was so different, but we all connected through our adventures. It made me realize that travel isn't just about places, it's about people and the memories you make together.
Later that night, we all sat around the fire, looking at the stars. The guide pointed out different constellations and told us how people used to navigate by the stars before GPS. It was peaceful and magical. I felt so grateful to be there, far from the city, surrounded by new friends.
Before we went to sleep, we made a plan to explore the forest together the next day. The guide promised to show us a secret waterfall that only locals knew about. I was so excited, I could hardly sleep.
In the morning, we woke up early and packed our things. The air was fresh and the forest was full of birdsong. We followed the guide along a narrow path, crossing small streams and climbing over rocks. The hike was long, but everyone helped each other. When someone got tired, we stopped for a break and shared snacks.
The best part was when we finally reached the waterfall. It was hidden behind tall trees and huge stones. The water was crystal clear and cold. We all took off our shoes and dipped our feet in. Some of us even went swimming. The Spanish couple took photos, and the Germans tried to build a little dam with rocks.
And we spent hours there just relaxing and enjoying the moment. I felt so free and happy. We talked about our dreams, our favorite places, and what we wanted to do next. It was like we had known each other for years, even though we had just met.
On the way back, we found wild strawberries and picked them for dessert. The guide showed us which plants were safe to eat and which ones to avoid. I learned so much from him. He knew every corner of the forest.
When we finally returned to camp, we were tired but full of new memories. We promised to keep in touch with our new friends. The Spanish couple invited us to visit their town, and the Germans said we should come hiking in the Alps with them one day.
That night, as we sat by the fire for the last time, I realized how lucky we were. We started the day as strangers, but ended it as friends. That's the magic of travel. You never know who you'll meet or what stories you'll share.
For anyone listening, don't be afraid to talk to new people when you travel. Sometimes the best adventures happen when you open up and say hello.
And always be ready for surprises. You might find a hidden treasure, get caught in a storm, or make friends from all over the world. That's what makes every journey special.
Next, let's talk about the time we tried to cross the river and ended up on a tiny island. That was another wild adventure.
Oh, I remember that. But let's save it for the next part. I think our listeners will love it.
Crossing the river with our new friends was a whole new adventure. The guide showed us a spot where the water was shallow, but the current was strong. We all took off our shoes, rolled up our pants, and held hands to keep our balance. The water was cold and fast, and I could feel the stones under my feet slipping away.
I remember laughing so much. The German guy started singing a funny hiking song, and the Spanish couple tried to dance in the water. Suddenly, the guide shouted, "Watch out for the deep part!" I almost lost my footing, but you grabbed my arm just in time.
We made it to the other side, but instead of a path, we found ourselves on a tiny island covered in tall grass and wildflowers. It felt like we had discovered a secret place. The guide said, "Let's rest here for a while." So we all sat down and shared snacks. Someone found a pack of cookies, and we passed them around, telling jokes and stories.
The island was peaceful. We watched birds flying overhead and listened to the sound of the river. The Spanish couple taught us a simple clapping game from their childhood, and soon everyone was playing and laughing. The Germans tried to teach us a tongue twister in their language, and we all failed miserably, but it was so funny.
After a while, the guide suggested we explore the island. We found a small cave hidden behind some bushes. Inside, it was cool and dark, and the walls were covered in strange marks, maybe old carvings or animal scratches. The guide explained that local people believed the cave was a safe place during storms.
We took turns telling ghost stories in the cave. The Spanish couple's story was about a lost traveler who found a magic stone. The Germans told a story about a mountain spirit. I tried to make up a story about a talking frog who lived on the island. Everyone laughed and added their own ideas.
When we left the cave, the sun was starting to set. The sky turned orange and pink, and the river sparkled in the light. We all sat together watching the sunset and feeling grateful for the day. The guide said, "This is why I love the forest. Every day is different, and every adventure is special."
Before we crossed back, we made a little wish. Each person picked a wildflower and threw it into the river, hoping for good luck on future journeys. It was a simple moment, but it felt magical.
Crossing back was even harder because the current was stronger. We helped each other, laughing and shouting encouragement. When we finally reached the shore, we were tired but happy. We hugged our new friends and promised to keep in touch.
That night, back at camp, we sat around the fire and talked about everything we had seen and done. The guide shared more stories about the forest, and the Spanish couple played soft music on their guitar. The Germans roasted marshmallows and taught us how to make a special treat with chocolate and cookies.
I realized that the best adventures aren't just about places, they're about people, laughter, and the memories you make together. Even a tiny island in the middle of a river can become a place you'll never forget.
For anyone listening, remember to be open to new experiences. Sometimes the most unexpected moments become your favorite stories. And don't be afraid to get a little wet or muddy. Adventure is everywhere.
Next, let's talk about the night we camped under the stars and heard strange sounds in the forest. That was another unforgettable part of our journey.
Oh, I remember that night. I can't wait to share what happened. Stay with us. Our adventure continues.
That night in the forest was something I'll never forget. After we crossed back from the island, the sky was already dark, and the only light came from our campfire and the stars above. The air was cool and fresh, and everything felt calm, but also a little mysterious. I remember how quiet it was. We all sat close to the fire, wrapped in our jackets, listening to the sounds of the forest. Sometimes we heard an owl, sometimes the wind in the trees, and sometimes little noises that made us wonder what was out there. The guide told us that the forest changes at night. He said, if you listen carefully, you can hear animals moving, but they're more afraid of us than we are of them. That made me feel a bit better, but I was still a little nervous.
I was too, but then the Spanish couple started playing soft music on their guitar, and everyone relaxed. We sang songs in different languages, Spanish, German, English. Even the guide joined in with a local folk song. It was so special, sitting there with people from all over the world, sharing music under the stars.
After a while, the fire started to die down, and we added more wood. The shadows grew longer, and the forest felt even more magical. The guide told us a story about a legendary animal that only comes out at night, a huge, gentle deer with golden antlers. He said, if you're lucky, you might see its shadow between the trees. I kept looking, hoping to see something, but all I saw were fireflies. They danced around us, making the night sparkle. I tried to catch one, but they were too quick. The German guys joked that maybe the fireflies were the golden antlers from the story.
Suddenly, we heard a strange sound, a kind of soft rustling, then a low growl. Everyone stopped talking. The guide stood up and listened. He whispered, "It's probably just a fox or a wild boar. Stay calm."
My heart was beating so fast, but the sound moved away, and soon everything was quiet again. We all laughed, a little embarrassed at how scared we were. The guide said, the forest likes to play tricks on your mind at night. To help us relax, the Spanish couple made hot chocolate on the fire. We passed the cups around, warming our hands. The chocolate tasted amazing after such a long day. We shared more stories, some funny, some scary, some just about life back home. I loved hearing about everyone's dreams and plans. The Germans wanted to travel to South America. The Spanish couple dreamed of opening a small cafe by the sea. The guide said he was happy just to live in the forest and show people its secrets. After a while, we all lay on our backs and watched the stars. The sky was so clear and we could see the Milky Way. The guide pointed out different constellations and told us their names. I felt so small, but also so connected to everyone around me.
We finally crawled into our tents, tired but happy. I listened to the sounds of the forest as I fell asleep, crickets, the wind, and sometimes a distant animal call. I felt safe knowing we were all together.
In the morning, the sun woke us up early. The forest looked completely different, bright and green and full of life. Birds were singing and the air smelled fresh. We made breakfast together, bread, fruit, and the last of our cookies. The guide showed us how to leave the campsite clean. We picked up all our trash, put out the fire, and made sure nothing was left behind. He said, "The forest gives us so much. We have to respect it and take care of it." Before we left, we took one last group photo. Everyone hugged and promised to stay in touch. I felt a little sad to say goodbye, but also grateful for all the memories we made.
As we walked back to the main road, I thought about everything we had experienced. The storm, the treasure box, the island, the campfire, and all the new friends. It was more than just a trip. It was a real adventure.
For anyone listening, remember that the best stories often come from the unexpected. Don't be afraid to try new things, meet new people, and spend a night under the stars. You never know what you'll discover.
And always keep your eyes and ears open. The world is full of surprises, and every adventure teaches you something new.
Next, let's talk about our journey back to the city and the little surprises that were waiting for us there, because sometimes the adventure doesn't end when you leave the forest.
Oh, that's true. The trip home was almost as wild as the forest. Let's share that story next.
Our journey back to the city felt almost unreal after everything we'd experienced in the forest. The road was long, but we kept talking about all the adventures, the storm, the treasure box, the island, and the new friends we made. I felt changed, like I'd learned something important about myself and the world.
Me too, Ava. I think travel teaches us to be brave, to trust others, and to enjoy every moment, even the difficult ones. On the way home, I kept thinking about how much English I used during our trip. Talking, listening, sharing stories, it helped me feel more confident and natural.
That's so true, Sophie. Listening is one of the best ways to improve your English. When you hear real conversations, you learn new words, phrases, and how people really speak. It's much more effective than just reading textbooks or memorizing grammar rules.
Absolutely. If you want to speak English freely, make listening a daily habit. Podcasts like ours are perfect for that. You get real stories, natural language, and lots of useful expressions. The more you listen, the easier it becomes to understand and speak.
So, if you enjoyed our adventures, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and hit the like button. That way, you won't miss any of our future episodes. We have so many more stories to share, and we want you to be part of our journey.
And remember, every time you listen, you're getting closer to speaking English confidently. Thank you for joining us today. We hope our stories inspire you to travel, learn, and never stop exploring.
Take care, everyone. Keep listening, keep practicing, and see you in the next episode.